guys, my name's Natalie and welcome back to Crime Vlogs Weekly. Social media has offered a new wave of careers for both younger and older generations. Although social media influencers can sometimes have a bad rep, the majority of them work really hard, they work tirelessly to build up a following and to make a full-time career out of it. Alexis Sharkey was a 26-year-old influencer who went missing and turned up dead. When it comes to social media, you want to be really careful about what you post online. After the whole Kim Kardashian incident where she had gone out in Paris one night in 2016 and then got robbed at gunpoint is a situation that I definitely have learned from as an influencer. I think when you're out and about, you tend to put stuff on social media in real time, not thinking that perhaps that could be quite a dangerous thing to do and that people who are engaging with your content would know where you are at that exact moment. And so for me, I tend to take photos of things that I'm doing or places that I'm visiting, and then I'll upload those photos later on rather than right at that moment. And many influencers and celebrities have had to deal with stalking from online followers. So when it comes to the case of Alexis Sharkey, what happened? Is it just a case of wrong time, wrong place, or did she know her killer? Alexis Robinall was a 26-year-old beauty and lifestyle influencer, and like me and many other influencers, she spent most of her time on social media. She had a job description of mentor, and she would post daily photos and stories to her 20,000 plus following. Born in 1994 in Pennsylvania, Alexis had two younger sisters, and Toby described Alexis as being a businesswoman, something that she feels Alexis would have wanted to be known for. She had a loving upbringing, and despite being obviously very pretty, she was also really clever. She was always motivated, always driven, and her family would say that if there was anything that Alexis wanted to do, she could do it. After doing very well at school, Alexis went to the University of Pittsburgh where she studied biology, nutrition and psychology. Now her plan was to go to medical school, but she first, like any young adult, wanted to take some time out of education to go travelling. She moved to Texas to a town called Odessa, I don't know how it's pronounced, and she worked at Twin Peaks, which was a sports bar. Now Alexis loved this job. It was a very social job which she loved, and she made a lot of friends whilst being there. In summer 2017 she got engaged, but this was later broken off, and she took solace with a lot of her friends at the sports bar who sort of guided her through her breakup. And after a little while she started getting friendly with one of the regulars at Twin Peaks, and his name was Tom Sharkey, and they clicked instantly. Tom Sharkey worked in the oil industry, and as part of that job he would travel the world, and I think that's what brought him and Alexis together through their mutual love of travel. So Tom was quite older than Alexis. Alexis was in her early 20s when they met, and Tom was in his mid-40s. Absolutely nothing wrong with age gaps, just thought I'd put it out there. He had been married and divorced, as well as having two kids. Alexis would be part of an MLM, which is otherwise known as a pyramid scheme, for a brand called Monet. Now Monet is a hair care company. Now there doesn't seem to be a lot of great reviews on the hair care brand, but you know, Alexis loved working for the company. Within just a month, she was doing really well, and eventually she would make her role as executive director. At the same time, she was working really hard on her Instagram, growing her following. She had a very good lifestyle, which she showed off on social media, and it's one of those lifestyles that you would envy. Her phone became her office, and like so many influencers and small business owners, she would use it every day. It was rare for her not to use her phone, which is important to mention for later on. Alexis got engaged to Tom in the summer of 2019, and she documented her move to Colorado on her YouTube channel. And they looked happily in love, all smiles, taking like these beautiful moments together, and you wouldn't have thought anything was wrong really. Eventually they moved back to Texas, but they took a road trip across New Mexico, Arizona, Utah and Colorado. Alexis and Tom would marry on December the 20th, 2019. But like many of us have come to realise that social media isn't an accurate portrayal of reality. We all like to show the perfect snippets of life mostly, and we're not really giving our viewers and, you know, the people who are following us the bigger picture. Now, Tom described their marriage as loving and solid, but Alexis's friends would come out and say that that wasn't the case. Apparently, the relationship was on the rocks. Now, Alexis had a group chat of women, I think were a mixture of people from the hair care brand Monet and also people she worked with and in and around Colorado. And this group chat was something that she would actively respond to and engage with pretty much every day. Alexis didn't really talk about her relationship with Tom to the girls, and this is something that strikes me as being a little bit odd because, you know, maybe some people don't talk about their relationship that often, but I would have thought that Tom's name would have cropped up from time to time. And then the pandemic hit, and like so many others, including me, Alexis joined TikTok. Now this became another platform for her to grow her following, but also to recruit new people. In November of 2020, she went on a couple of trips with her friend Martha, and there was no sign of Tom in any of the photos that she was taking on social media, any of the stories. Tom was nowhere to be seen. When she got back home, she started making holiday plans, and one of those was that she wasn't going to make it to her parents' house for Thanksgiving, which was upsetting for her mum because obviously she wanted to see her daughter, and Alexis hadn't been home, I think, for over a year. However, they agreed that Alexis would come and spend Christmas with the family, and her mum strikes this situation as being quite odd because Alexis was very family orientated and she would often visit family. And I know things can get busy, but you know, to not see your mum in over a year is quite extreme, albeit a pandemic is part of that as well. Alexis spent Thanksgiving at her friend Tanya's house, but Tom didn't go, which I think, you know, some couples don't spend the festive holidays together, but I would think that, you know, Alexis and Tom would want to spend Thanksgiving together, seeing as they had only recently got married. Alexis later that night would go out with another friend, and she wouldn't return back to Tanya's house until 3 AM, where she tried calling Tanya to say that she'd left some stuff at her place and that she wanted to just swing by and come and grab them. Tanya was asleep at this point, so she didn't see or hear any of the messages or calls that Alexis had left for her, but Alexis did come by and pick up her car. The following day, the 27th of November, was Black Friday, and this is a big shopping event that has originated, I think, from the US. It has come over here to the UK. I don't know how big it is in other countries, but it's certainly one of those frenzied few days that has kind of typically for sales turned into like a week's worth of sales, where brands, companies discount their items and everyone just goes mad for it. Now, this would be a fantastic opportunity for Alexis to promote the hair care products, to promote discount on these hair care products, as well as the rest of the team that she was managing. But Alexis didn't post a single thing. Alexis would later message the girls group that she had on WhatsApp at 5:30, asking what everyone was up to and that she wanted to go out. And Tanya said that she wasn't available. I think she still had her mum round from Thanksgiving, and that we could possibly have a sleepover the following day. This was suggested by Tanya, and it was all agreed that that is what would happen. This was the last correspondence that any of her friends had with Alexis, and still Alexis hadn't posted a single thing regarding Black Friday, so it's very unusual behaviour on her part. So a few hours later, Tom would text one of Alexis's friend's boyfriend, John, asking to see if anyone had seen Alexis. And John found this odd because it's like, why would you ask about someone who's potentially missing via text? Like, it's your wife, you would probably call that person rather than just leaving a message. And as this was quite weird, John did call Tom at 11 PM, and it turns out that Tom had said that she had gone missing and that they'd had an argument before she left the house. Now, John thought this conversation seemed quite strange, and even though Tom had said this initial story, his story actually changed several times, including the fact that they hadn't gotten into a fight. Now, Tom's initial telling of what had happened is that Alexis had run out in sneakers and sweats, jumped over a fence and got into a black car. But then in another version, Tom had said that she may have left on foot, and that there's one version where she took her phone and that there was another version where she didn't take her phone. And he said in the version where she had taken her phone, he was actually in a black car following her, so tracking her on the phone. whilst driving in a black car. Tom said that he pulled up at a nearby gas station after losing her during his search, and that he would spend 2 hours collecting his thoughts before like ringing round to friends and family. Oh, that sounds suspicious to me. And it was actually her friends who filed the missing persons report, and there was a big social media frenzy online. I remember at the time seeing probably a dozen or so posts that people had put up on their stories wanting to find Alexis, said that she'd gone missing. But unfortunately, despite all the social media coverage, Alexis's body would be found just 2 to 3 miles away from where Tom and Alexis lived. She was found completely naked, and the workers who found her said that she looked really clean and that her positioning, the way she'd been laid down, was a little bit odd. They actually thought that she was a mannequin when they drove past. So initially, when the police arrived on the scene, they thought that this was possibly a drug overdose because there was no visible injuries to her body. However, that doesn't really explain why she was found completely naked. Only recently, though, it was discovered that the official cause of her death was strangulation. Tom was Alexis's next of kin, and so he had a say over what happened to her body and where she would be buried. And he worked with the family, you know, to get her back home, to get her buried there for so long, and then he completely cut off correspondence as this was all happening. He just stopped talking to them. And bless Alexis's poor mother had been going back and forth with the coroner until finally the coroner, signed off Alexis's body so that her mum could bring her home. Now this behaviour is extremely odd, and I could only imagine that perhaps he was just simply overwhelmed by, you know, losing his wife, and that he was overcome by grief and just didn't want to take any of the responsibility at that point. Now there's a lot of suspicions surrounding Tom, and if I have to look at it with, you know, everything that's been said on the media by her friends and kind of what seems to have happened in those last few months in terms of their relationship possibly being on the rocks, it does kind of point and suggest that it could be him. And like I've said before on this channel, the first place that police tend to look when it comes to someone being murdered is their immediate family and friends. The chances of someone being killed by someone they don't know is very, very slim. The other thing that I find really interesting is that with a lot of marital murders, the person will always say, oh, we had a fight, and they left in a huff. Like, it's quite common for people to say, oh, we had a fight, so that person left, and then I just didn't see them again. And I mean, if that was the case, then I think if it was me, I would have probably left. I probably would have called like a friend or family to say, oh my God, I've just had an argument. Can I come over to your place? Like, you'd be wanting to seek some sort of, some support and love from, you know, your other friends and family. But there was no communication. There was absolutely nothing, which again strikes me as being quite odd. Tom is also quite a big guy. He's very fit, and so if the fight had gotten physical, then things could have ended quite badly for Alexis. Now, it's odd that her body was found naked, and if we were going with the theory of it being Tom, I would think that maybe he strangled her to death and thought, right, I need to get rid of any evidence, and her clothing would possibly become evidence, and there would be a chance of fingerprints and DNA evidence left on her clothing. And then perhaps he dumped her in a panic. If it was someone who had maybe attacked her after she left the house, then maybe, you know, she could have been strangled after, you know, there was like an attempted sexual assault or assault on her, and the strangulation sort of happened out of like pure panic. But it doesn't explain why, like, her clothes were removed, like all her clothes were removed, and then they weren't at the scene, like they've been taken, which is, you know, it's a bit bizarre. It doesn't really make sense. Tom changing his story is an odd one. It could be, you know, a case of him being panicked and distressed in that moment and forgetting information or adding information in that's, you know, slightly exaggerated. It does sound as if he's backtracking because maybe he's realised he's giving too much information about what really happened. Maybe he's tried to cover up parts of the story with lies and that they just don't make sense. I think if he did do it, then maybe he used his black car to dispose of the body, and he then went to the gas station for 2 hours to kind of give himself an alibi. I don't think this is some random attack. I think Alexis probably would have put up a fight and therefore there would be defensive wounds, but as the police mentioned, there was no sort of injuries to her body, and it just doesn't make sense that she would be naked so close to her home as well. So this case is ongoing, so as time goes on and more things develop, I will definitely be sure to let you know and update you through this channel. I would be surprised if Tom wasn't involved in some way, because everything that I've read about the case and his changing of stories, it just seems very suspicious. I don't know, do let me know in the comments below what you think, and let me know if I've missed out any information from my research, anything that's updated since me doing my research. I would really appreciate it. Make sure you let me know in the comments what cases you'd like me to cover next. Don't forget to like and subscribe, clicking that bell notification to make sure that you get notified every time I upload a video, and I will see you guys next week. Bye guys!